Woman found a buried bunker in her backyard. What was inside made her call 911. Work bills, quiet evenings, and weekends that passed too quickly. The house itself was old but strong, built decades ago, with thick walls and a feeling of silence that sometimes felt comforting and sometimes felt heavy. She bought it after her divorce, wanting a place where she could start over, far from noise and memories that hurt too much. The backyard was not very big, but it was uneven. Most of it was covered in grass that grew in strange patterns. Near the back fence stood an old oak tree, tall and wide, its branches spreading like arms frozen in time. Under that tree was a patch of ground that always looked different. The grass there never grew properly. During rain, water collected there first. In summer, the soil cracked faster than the rest of the yard. She noticed it many times but never thought much about it. Old houses often had odd little problems. One Saturday morning, she woke up with a strange need to clean and organize. The weather was clear, the sky pale blue, and the air calm. It felt like a good day to do something physical, something that would keep her mind quiet. She made herself coffee, put on old clothes, and stepped outside with gloves and a shovel. She started near the back fence, pulling weeds and clearing broken branches. As she worked, her eyes kept moving back to the sunken patch near the oak tree. That spot looked worse than usual. The ground had sunk just enough to make her wonder if something underneath was slowly collapsing. She told herself it was probably an old tree root or poor drainage, but curiosity pulled her closer. She pushed the shovel into the soil. It went in easily at first. The dirt was loose, darker than the surrounding ground. She dug again and again, clearing away grass and soil. After several minutes, the shovel made a sound that stopped her completely. It wasn't the dull sound of rock or the sharp crack of wood. It was a deep, solid clang. She froze, gripping the shovel handle tightly. She tried again, carefully this time. The same sound came back, clear and unmistakable. Metal. Her first thought was that it might be an old pipe or trash buried long ago. People buried all kinds of things decades ago without caring much about rules. Still, something about the sound felt wrong. The metal felt thick, strong, not like scrap. She brushed away more dirt with her hands. Slowly, a flat surface began to appear. It was smooth, cold to the touch, and gray in color. As she cleared more soil, she realized it wasn't just a flat piece of metal. It was round, perfectly round. Her heart started beating faster. She stepped back, wiping sweat from her forehead. The air felt different now, heavier somehow. She told herself she was imagining things. Still, she couldn't stop looking at it. She continued digging around the edges, careful not to damage whatever it was. After nearly an hour, the shape became clear. It was a metal hatch buried just below the surface. There were bolts around the edges and a thick handle in the center. It looked old, but not weak. It looked like it was meant to stay closed. She stood there in silence, listening. The neighborhood was quiet. No cars, no voices, only the sound of leaves moving slightly in the wind. She suddenly felt very exposed, as if the ground itself had been watching her. She remembered the day she bought the house. The real estate agent had been nervous, rushing through the paperwork. The price had been much lower than similar homes in the area. When she asked why, the agent said the previous owner had left suddenly and the family wanted to sell quickly. No more details were given. At the time, she didn't ask questions. She needed a fresh start and the house felt solid, safe. Now, standing over a buried metal hatch, those memories felt different. She walked back into the house and grabbed her phone. She searched online for old property records but found very little. The house had changed owners only once before her, and before that the records were unclear. Some files were missing. That alone was strange, but not enough to explain what she had just uncovered. She went back outside and crouched beside the hatch. Dirt still clung to the edges. There was a faint marking on the metal, almost worn away by time. She wiped it gently with her glove. Letters appeared, faint but readable. They didn't form a full word, just part of one. It looked official, not homemade. Her stomach tightened. She stood up quickly, looking around her yard and toward the neighboring houses. Curtains were closed. No one was outside. It was like the whole street was holding its breath. She told herself she should stop. This was not her problem. She could cover it back up and call someone later. But another part of her mind, the part that always needed answers, refused to let go. She tugged on the handle. It didn't move. She tried again using both hands. Nothing. The hatch was sealed tight. She noticed small scratches around the handle, as if someone had tried to open it before. Recently. That thought made her step back again. Suddenly, she remembered small things she had ignored over the years. Nights when her phone's signal dropped for no clear reason. A low vibration she once felt through the floor late at night, so faint she thought it was her imagination. The way delivery drivers sometimes paused at the edge of her property, checking the address twice before coming closer. All of it rushed back now, forming a pattern she didn't like. She covered the hatch loosely with a tarp and placed a heavy planter over it, trying to hide it from view. Her hands were shaking, and she felt foolish for being scared, yet she couldn't calm herself down. The rest of the day passed slowly. She stayed inside, jumping at small sounds. Every time a car passed, she looked out the window. She didn't tell anyone about what she found. Saying it out loud felt dangerous, like giving the secret more power. That night, sleep didn't come easily. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening. The house creaked as it always did, but now each sound felt sharper, closer. Around midnight, she thought she heard something else. A low hum. So soft it could have been air moving through walls, but steady enough to make her sit up. She held her breath and listened. The sound stopped. The next morning, she woke up tired but determined. She needed to know what was under her backyard. Living with the question felt worse than facing the answer. She made breakfast she barely touched, then went outside again. The tarp was still in place. Nothing looked disturbed. Still, she had the uneasy feeling that she wasn't alone in this discovery, that someone else knew exactly what lay beneath the soil and might not want it uncovered. She pulled the tarp aside and stared down at the metal hatch once more. Sunlight reflected off its surface, making it look almost clean, almost new, despite being buried for so long. She placed her hand on it again. It was cold. Whatever was below had been hidden carefully, intentionally, and she was standing directly on top of it. As she straightened up, a single thought repeated in her mind, louder than all the others. Some things are buried because they are meant to stay hidden, but she had already found it. And nothing in her life would ever feel normal again. The morning sun spilled across the backyard, lighting up the grass and the old oak tree. The woman stood over the hatch once more, her heart still racing from the thoughts that had kept her awake the night before. She felt a mixture of fear and curiosity that she couldn't ignore. Part of her wanted to walk away, to leave the hatch covered and pretend it didn't exist. But another part, stronger, more persistent, urged her to find out what lay beneath the soil. She glanced around the quiet neighborhood. The streets were empty, the occasional bird calling from a distant tree the only sound that reminded her life went on outside her own little world of mystery. Taking a deep breath, she knelt beside the hatch and examined it more closely. The metal surface was cold and unyielding, with bolts arranged evenly around its edges. The handle in the center looked heavy and uninviting, as if daring her to lift it. She considered her options. She could call someone, maybe the local authorities, but something inside told her this was not an ordinary situation. What if this was something more than just a forgotten cellar or old storage space? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She decided she had to see it for herself first. Going back into the house, she gathered some supplies. She wore sturdy gloves, grabbed a flashlight, and found a thick rope in the garage that she thought could help her climb in and out if necessary. She even brought a small crowbar she had used for moving furniture, just in case the handle was stuck. As she returned to the backyard, the weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. Every step felt heavier than the last, and her breathing became shallow. Standing above the hatch, she took another deep breath and gripped the handle with both hands. She pulled with all her strength. The first attempt did nothing. She tried again, harder this time, feeling the metal edges strain under her pressure. Then with a sudden metallic groan, the hatch shifted slightly. Her heart leapt. She could see a dark space beneath, a small opening that seemed almost to swallow the sunlight. She stepped back, catching her breath, and stared into the darkness. A narrow ladder descended into the blackness, its rungs dusty but solid. The smell that came from below was faint but strange, like damp earth mixed with metal. She shivered. Despite the unease crawling over her skin, curiosity pushed her forward. She placed her foot on the first rung and began to descend, the metal cold and unsteady beneath her grip. As she moved down the ladder, the daylight faded, replaced by the small beam of her flashlight. The air grew cooler and heavier, carrying with it a smell of earth, rust, and something else she couldn't identify. The walls of the bunker were concrete, solid and gray, with streaks where water had slowly seeped through over time. It was clear that this underground space had been built with purpose, not something casual or accidental. At the bottom of the ladder, she stepped carefully onto the dusty floor. Her shoes left small prints, tiny clouds of dust rising around her. She shone the flashlight across the room, taking in the sight. The bunker was larger than she had expected. There were shelves along the walls, stacked with boxes and containers that looked old but surprisingly intact. There were several metal cabinets, all closed and locked, and what appeared to be a small table with papers scattered on it, some yellowed with age. Her eyes widened as she noticed the level of organization. This was not just a storage space. Someone had lived here or used it regularly. There were remnants of food supplies, canned goods, jars, and packets that, while old, had been carefully stored. There were also emergency supplies, water bottles, blankets, and first aid kits. Everything was arranged neatly, almost as if the person who used this bunker expected someone to enter, yet wanted to maintain order. As she moved further into the room, she noticed a faint hum, barely audible but steady. It seemed to come from the far corner where wires ran along the walls and disappeared into the floor. Her pulse quickened. Electricity? This underground space had power, and recently, too. She felt a chill as she realized that someone might still be using this bunker, or had been very recently. Her hands shook slightly as she approached the shelves. Boxes were labeled in neat handwriting, some with dates, some with words she didn't fully understand. One box read Emergency Equipment, 2024. Another Supplies, 2023. The handwriting was careful, almost meticulous, as if the person who wrote it wanted everything to be clear and precise. She picked up a piece of paper from the table, old but readable. It was a list of names, dates, and locations, some with marks beside them. She couldn't understand the purpose of the list, but it felt important, as if it was part of a plan she wasn't meant to know about. Moving slowly, she explored the room. The lockers were locked, their metal cold under her fingertips. She noticed the faint scratch marks on one of the doors, as though someone had tried to force it open recently. Her imagination raced. Who could have used this place, and why? The house had been sold years ago. Was this person still nearby, watching? She turned her attention back to the far corner where the hum was strongest. There was a small generator, its casing clean and functional, humming softly. A set of batteries was neatly lined up beside it, and wires ran along the wall, connecting to what looked like a simple lighting system. The faint illumination revealed more details of the bunker: small cupboards, additional boxes, and a set of papers pinned to a corkboard. She approached the corkboard cautiously. It held more lists, maps, and handwritten notes. Some maps showed nearby streets and landmarks, while others were less clear, with strange symbols she didn't recognize. Dates were written in red ink, some recent, some older. A calendar was pinned up, but the months had been marked in a strange sequence, as if someone was tracking events according to their own system. Her mind spun with questions. Why would someone need to hide all this here? A sudden noise made her jump. Something clattered in the corner, a small metallic sound like a box falling. She froze, holding her breath. The hum of the generator continued steadily, unchanged. She told herself it was the wind or the dust shifting, but her imagination would not let her rest. She slowly turned, flashlight sweeping across the room. Nothing moved, nothing appeared out of place. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to calm down. She reminded herself that she was alone and that fear could make ordinary sounds seem dangerous. Still, the bunker felt alive in some way, almost as if it were waiting. She knew she needed to be careful. She moved toward one of the metal cabinets, inspecting it closely. The lock was heavy, rusted slightly, but secure. She tried to open it with the crowbar she had brought, but it would not budge. Whatever was inside had been meant to stay locked away. Her flashlight beam caught a small door in the far wall, almost hidden in the shadows. It was different from the main hatch, smaller, reinforced, and clearly designed to prevent entry. She hesitated, hand hovering over the handle. The idea of opening it terrified her, yet curiosity gnawed at her relentlessly. She pictured the space beyond it. Maybe more supplies, maybe evidence of someone living here. She knew opening it could reveal secrets she might not be ready for, but she also knew she could not stop now. Carefully, she tested the handle. It moved slightly, then resisted. The metal was cool under her glove. She pulled again, stronger this time, and heard a faint click. The door creaked open just enough to reveal a dark interior. She shone her flashlight inside. Dust particles floated in the air, lit up by the beam, and she saw shelves filled with more boxes, small crates, and what looked like personal belongings. She stepped back, heart pounding. Whoever had used this bunker had left in a hurry, but not too long ago. Everything was preserved carefully, almost untouched. Yet the presence of the generator and the electricity suggested someone could have returned at any moment. She realized she had no idea what to do next. Should she continue exploring or leave and call for help? Her mind raced with possibilities. What if someone came back while she was down here? What if this was more than just an abandoned bunker, something illegal or dangerous? The thought made her stomach tighten. But turning away now seemed impossible. She had already uncovered too much. She moved further into the room, carefully inspecting the crates and boxes. Some contained canned food neatly stacked. Others held equipment she did not recognize, tools, devices with buttons and wires, and small notebooks filled with detailed notes. She picked one up, flipping through the pages. The handwriting was careful, precise, and methodical. Some pages were filled with calculations, others with lists of names and places. Her curiosity grew, mixed now with a rising fear. The woman realized she needed to stay calm. She sat down on the dusty floor, flashlight steady, and began examining the notes more closely. She tried to piece together what this bunker had been used for. It was clear that it had been organized with care, almost like a project, but she couldn't make sense of the purpose. Time passed without her noticing. She was so absorbed in the papers and boxes that she barely realized how long she had been underground. The quiet hum of the generator was the only sound, punctuated occasionally by the creak of the floorboards or the faint drip of water from the ceiling. Her heart continued to beat fast, but she felt a strange sense of focus, as if the bunker itself demanded her attention. Suddenly, a faint noise from above the hatch made her freeze. It was a soft shift, almost imperceptible. She held her breath, listening. The sound stopped as quickly as it started. Her mind raced again. Could someone be above, watching her? Or was it just the house settling? The thought of being discovered, trapped here, made her pulse quicken. Despite her fear, she knew she had to continue. She carefully explored each corner of the bunker, documenting everything in her mind. She checked shelves, crates, and cupboards, shining her flashlight into every dark space. Some boxes contained clothing, others personal items, and some had documents she couldn't yet read. The realization struck her that this bunker might hold secrets that could change everything she thought she knew about her quiet neighborhood. Hours seemed to pass as she worked, though she didn't notice the time. The sun outside had moved high in the sky, but down here it was always dark. The more she uncovered, the more convinced she became that this was no ordinary hidden storage space. It had been prepared carefully, used with precision, and possibly still active. Finally, exhaustion began to set in. Her hands were sore, her back ached from crouching and bending, yet she couldn't leave without understanding at least some of what she had found. She sat down again, flashlight on her knees, and took a deep breath. The bunker was vast, mysterious, and dangerous in a way she hadn't anticipated. And the most frightening part was knowing that she might not be the first person to discover it, or the last. As she sat in the dim glow of her flashlight, she realized that one thing was certain. Her life had changed the moment she uncovered that hatch. She had entered a world hidden beneath the familiar backyard, a world that someone had gone to great lengths to keep secret. And now she was a part of it. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she could not ignore it. She had stepped too far into the darkness to turn back. The woman sat in the dim light of the bunker, her flashlight resting on the dusty floor beside her. She was exhausted, her muscles sore from hours of bending, crouching, and examining every corner of the hidden space. Yet her mind refused to rest. Every detail she had seen kept replaying, swirling in her thoughts. The careful organization, the maps, the lists, the generator, it all pointed to one thing. Someone had used this bunker for a very specific purpose. And maybe, just maybe, that someone wasn't far away. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her clothes. The smaller door in the corner had caught her attention before, but now she felt ready to face whatever might be inside. She approached it carefully, gripping her flashlight like a weapon, her heart hammering against her chest. The metal handle was cold under her glove, and for a moment she hesitated. What if opening it revealed something she could never unsee? What if she wasn't supposed to know what lay beyond? Steeling herself, she pulled on the handle. At first it resisted, but with steady pressure it began to move. A low creak echoed through the small bunker as the door swung open, revealing another narrow room. This one was darker than the first, the shadows thicker, almost suffocating. She shone her flashlight inside and saw more shelves, more boxes, and in the very corner a set of locked cabinets. As she stepped in, her foot nudged a small object on the floor. She bent down and picked it up. It was a photograph, slightly faded, showing a group of people in uniforms she didn't recognize. Their faces were serious, eyes staring directly at the camera, and there was something about the way it was taken that made her uneasy. Someone had placed it here deliberately, and for some reason it had survived unnoticed for years. She continued exploring the room, carefully opening each box that wasn't locked. Some contained emergency supplies, food, water, blankets, flashlights. Others held tools, equipment she didn't fully understand, wires, small machines, and gadgets. Each item was meticulously stored, wrapped in paper or cloth to protect it from dust and moisture. It was clear that whoever had built this bunker had planned to use it for a long time, and perhaps for a very specific goal. Then she noticed the papers pinned to the far wall. Maps, letters, notes, all arranged neatly as if waiting for someone to read them. Her eyes fell on one particular page, a handwritten journal. She picked it up carefully, brushing off dust, and began reading. The handwriting was neat, precise, almost obsessive. The entries detailed days spent in the bunker, observations, tasks, and strange references to dates and locations she did not recognize. Some pages contained diagrams, symbols, and numbers, and as she read further, a feeling of dread settled in her stomach. This wasn't just a storage space, it was a workspace. Someone had been working here, planning, recording, organizing, and based on the recent entries she found, it hadn't been abandoned for long. The thought made her pulse quicken. Could this person still be around, watching? Planning to return, her flashlight flickered slightly as if to warn her. She shook her head, telling herself it was just the battery, but her unease grew. She moved to the locked cabinets in the corner. Each one was heavy and reinforced, clearly meant to keep whatever was inside secure. She tried the crowbar again, gently, testing the locks. They held fast, but the scratches on the metal suggested someone had tried to open them recently. That detail chilled her. Whoever had been here, it seemed, had returned not long ago. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from above the main hatch. A shift, a movement, soft but unmistakable. She froze, holding her breath. The hum of the generator continued steadily, masking the small sounds around her, but now she was hyper-aware of every creak, every vibration. She pressed herself against the wall, flashlight steady, listening. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had started. Her mind raced. Could someone be up there? Could they have known she was here? Her instincts told her to leave immediately, to climb the ladder and lock the hatch behind her. But curiosity, that relentless pull she had felt since the moment she discovered the metal surface in her backyard, would not let her go. She needed to see what was inside those locked cabinets. She needed to understand why this bunker existed and who had used it. She moved back to the cabinets, shining her flashlight along the locks. One cabinet had a small combination lock. She studied it, trying to remember if she had seen any numbers or clues among the papers she had read. Her fingers trembled as she traced the lock. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and steady in the confined space. Then she noticed something she had overlooked before, a small note tucked under the cabinet's edge. Carefully, she pulled it out. It was folded neatly, and the handwriting was the same as in the journal. It read, "Do not open until instructed. Danger remains." Her stomach tightened. Danger. The word echoed in her mind, matching the growing sense of fear she had tried to ignore. Still, she couldn't stop. She had come too far. She set the note aside and focused on the lock. After several attempts, using numbers she remembered from the journal, the lock clicked open. Her hands shook as she lifted the cabinet door. Inside were files, envelopes, and boxes labeled with names, dates, and locations. She pulled out one envelope and opened it. Inside were photographs of strangers, their faces carefully captured, some in public places, others in more private settings. Each photo had notes attached, times, locations, and small remarks in precise handwriting. The realization hit her like a cold wave. This bunker had been used to track people, observe them, record details, and plan. Her breath caught. She had stumbled upon something that went far beyond ordinary secrecy. As she absorbed the information, she noticed a calendar on the wall. Several dates were circled in red, recent, and upcoming. The thought that someone might be planning something in the near future sent a shiver down her spine. She felt trapped in a story far larger than herself, and yet she couldn't look away. The details were too compelling, too terrifying to ignore. Then came the sound, a soft shuffle just behind the hatch. Her body froze, every muscle tight. Someone was there. She had no doubt. Her mind raced with possibilities. Should she run, hide, confront? Every instinct screamed at her to get out, yet fear rooted her to the spot. She stepped back toward the ladder, flashlight still trained on the cabinets, trying to appear calm. The shuffling continued, faint but deliberate. Whoever was above was moving carefully, listening, waiting. She realized she might not have the time she thought. Climbing the ladder now could alert them, but staying in the bunker risked being discovered from below. Her mind searched for solutions. She needed help, but how could she call for it without giving away her location? Her phone was upstairs, out of reach, and making noise might draw attention. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then she remembered the small generator in the main room. It powered the lights and possibly other devices in the bunker. If she could shut it off, maybe she could mask her movements, create a distraction, and buy herself a few moments. She moved carefully toward the generator, hands steady despite her fear. Her flashlight illuminated the dials and switches. She hesitated, then flipped the switch. The lights dimmed and a faint hum stopped. Darkness replaced the glow, but her flashlight provided just enough light to see. Holding her breath, she moved toward the ladder. Step by step, she climbed, keeping as quiet as possible. Her mind raced with everything she had seen, the photographs, the journal, the notes, the equipment. Whoever had used this bunker had been meticulous, careful, and possibly dangerous. She understood now why it had been hidden. This was not a place meant for ordinary discovery. Reaching the hatch, she paused, hand on the metal handle. The sound above shifted slightly again, closer now. Panic surged and she forced herself to act. With a strong pull, she lifted the hatch. Fresh air hit her face and sunlight blinded her for a moment. She climbed quickly, pulling herself out, and dropped the hatch back into place. Heart pounding, she backed away, keeping her eyes on the oak tree and the surrounding yard. Every sound seemed amplified. The quiet neighborhood felt suddenly ominous, as if the shadows themselves were watching. She ran to the side of the house, grabbing her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed 911. While waiting for help, she could barely speak, trying to explain the situation. The operator remained calm, instructing her to stay inside and lock the doors. She followed the instructions, glancing nervously at the backyard, the metal hatch, the oak tree. She knew the bunker held secrets she could not fully understand, but she also knew she had narrowly escaped something dangerous. By the time the police arrived, she was shaking, exhausted, and still trying to comprehend what she had uncovered. Officers examined the yard, secured the hatch, and began questioning her. She explained everything, from the first discovery to the small, hidden room filled with files and equipment. The authorities listened carefully, taking notes, and assured her that professionals would investigate further. As she sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, she realized how close she had come to being caught in something far beyond her understanding. The bunker, once hidden beneath her quiet backyard, had revealed secrets that were not meant to be found. And though she was safe now, a part of her knew that the shadow of what she had discovered would never leave her. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard. She stared at the oak tree, the spot where the hatch had been, and shivered. The world had shifted beneath her feet. What she had seen in the bunker was only the beginning. There were questions she could not yet answer and dangers she could not yet see. And deep inside, she knew one thing with certainty. Life, as she had known it, would never be the same again. The woman sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick blanket the police had given her, staring at the backyard that only hours ago had been a normal, quiet place. Now it felt like something entirely different, haunted, secretive, and dangerous. Her hands shook as she sipped the lukewarm tea a neighbor had brought over. She could barely process the events of the day. A hidden bunker beneath her backyard, filled with documents, equipment, and signs of recent activity. Someone had been living there, watching, recording, and planning. The thought alone was terrifying. The police had promised that the area was secure, that professionals would investigate the bunker thoroughly. They reassured her that she was safe for now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the threat she had glimpsed beneath the earth was far from gone. She had discovered a world hidden below her familiar home, a world she had never imagined, and the reality was overwhelming. Every small sound made her flinch. The rustle of leaves in the wind, the faint hum of her neighbor's air conditioner, even the quiet creak of her own front door. Hours later, the authorities returned. They had brought specialized teams to inspect the bunker and collect evidence. Men and women in uniforms and plain clothes worked methodically, opening cabinets, taking photographs, and carefully packing files and boxes for analysis. The woman watched from a safe distance, curiosity and fear battling inside her. She wanted to know everything they would find, but she was also terrified of the truth. As the investigation continued, the media began to arrive. A few reporters had somehow learned of the story, asking questions, snapping photos, and creating a small commotion outside her quiet neighborhood. She ignored them, retreating further into the safety of her home. The story, once personal and private, had grown larger than she had ever expected. Her life, she realized, would never return to normal. That evening, after the authorities had left for the day, she stepped into the backyard once more. The hatch was now secured and clearly marked as part of an ongoing investigation. Sunlight glinted off the metal surface, and for a moment the backyard seemed peaceful again. But she knew better. Beneath the surface, hidden from sight, lay the remnants of someone else's life, someone who had worked here with care and precision, someone who might return. Her thoughts drifted to the journal, the photographs, the lists, and the strange, precise notes she had seen. Each item told a story of secrecy, planning, and vigilance. Whoever had created this bunker had been meticulous, careful, and determined. The level of organization suggested someone who expected to be discovered at some point, but wanted to control the timing. And she had stumbled into that carefully constructed world. Sleep came fitfully that night. Every noise in the house made her heart race. She imagined shadows moving outside her windows, the rustling of leaves becoming footsteps, the faint creak of boards above as someone returned to the bunker. Her imagination turned the ordinary into the extraordinary, fear turning the mundane into danger. She wondered if she would ever feel safe again in her own home. Days passed slowly. The investigation continued, though the woman was not allowed to enter the backyard while the bunker was being examined. She learned little about the findings. The authorities were tight-lipped, speaking only in reassurances that she was not in immediate danger. Yet the feeling of unease lingered. Her home, once a sanctuary, had become a place of hidden threats and unseen eyes. Every sound, every movement, reminded her of what she had discovered. During this time, she reflected on the life she had built in the house. 7 years of quiet, ordinary days now felt fragile and temporary. She remembered the first morning she had walked into the backyard, noticing the sunken patch of earth near the oak tree. At the time, it had seemed like nothing more than an oddity of the landscape. Now it was a doorway into a hidden world, a world of secrets she had never imagined. The contrast between her mundane life and the strange reality beneath her feet was staggering. One afternoon, the authorities allowed her a supervised visit to the backyard. She stood over the hatch, now marked with official tape and guarded by officers. A professional team had opened the bunker and removed many of the boxes, cabinets, and documents for careful analysis. The space that had once seemed endless and mysterious was now partially empty, stripped of its contents, yet the air still felt heavy. The sense of someone's presence lingered, like a shadow that had not yet disappeared. She asked questions, but the officers could only answer in generalities. They told her the bunker contained personal records, detailed logs, and equipment indicating long-term use, but they would not reveal specifics. She understood. The truth was complicated, and she was not yet ready for it, or perhaps no one wanted her to know it. All she could do was observe, watch the cleanup, and try to process what had happened. In the following weeks, she began to notice changes in herself. She became more cautious, more aware of her surroundings. Simple walks in the neighborhood were now exercises in vigilance. She locked doors and windows meticulously, checked her backyard several times a day, and felt the weight of unseen eyes constantly. The discovery of the bunker had changed her perception of safety. She realized that ordinary life could conceal extraordinary secrets, and sometimes the past reached into the present in ways she could never anticipate. Despite the fear, a small part of her felt a strange sense of empowerment. She had faced the unknown, uncovered secrets buried beneath her backyard and survived. The knowledge she had gained, though unsettling, gave her a new perspective on her own resilience. She had acted carefully, logically, and with courage in the face of uncertainty. She had seen a hidden world, and though it frightened her, she had confronted it rather than turning away. Neighbors began to speak to her differently. Some expressed curiosity, others whispered concerns. The story of the bunker had spread quietly but widely. People who had once ignored her now asked questions, watched her movements, and sometimes offered subtle warnings. She realized the neighborhood itself was changed. The ordinary streets, the quiet yards, and familiar faces now felt layered with mystery, as though the past had left marks that could not be erased. Her nights remained difficult. Every creak of the house, every shadow cast by the moonlight, reminded her of the bunker and its hidden secrets. She often dreamed of the underground rooms, the cabinets filled with documents, and the mysterious presence she had sensed. The dreams were vivid, almost real, and sometimes she would wake gasping, unsure whether the noise that woke her was imagination or reality. Time slowly passed, and life resumed in small ways. She returned to her routines, went to work, and interacted with neighbors. Yet the memory of the bunker lingered, an invisible thread connecting her daily life to a hidden, unknown world beneath the ground. She knew she would never be able to forget the discovery, the fear, and the strange mixture of fascination and dread that had accompanied it. One afternoon, she received a letter from the authorities. It was brief, formal, and carefully worded. The investigation into the bunker had revealed that it had been used for long-term storage and documentation, and the space contained materials of interest to federal authorities. They thanked her for reporting the discovery and assured her that no immediate threat remained. They encouraged her to continue observing her surroundings and to report any unusual activity. Reading the letter, she felt a mixture of relief and lingering unease. The danger, she realized, might not be immediate, but the presence of the bunker and the unknown person or people who had used it remained a permanent part of her reality. The sense of being watched, even if imagined, would continue to influence her thoughts and actions. She walked into the backyard that evening, sunlight soft on the grass, and stood over the hatch one last time. The surrounding air was calm, birds singing quietly in the distance, yet she felt the weight of what lay beneath. The bunker was no longer a mystery to her. It had been explored, documented, and investigated. Still, the knowledge of its existence and of the careful, deliberate use it had seen remained with her. The oak tree, once a simple part of the landscape, now symbolized the hidden layers of life, the secrets that could exist in familiar places, and the thin line between ordinary and extraordinary. She understood now that some mysteries were not just stories. They were realities that shaped lives in ways that could not be ignored. Over time, she adjusted to the presence of the unknown in her life. She reinforced her sense of security, installed cameras, and developed routines that ensured she felt safe. Yet she carried with her a new awareness, a respect for the hidden and the secret, and an understanding that life could hold depths beneath the surface that were both fascinating and frightening. Looking back, she realized the discovery of the bunker had changed her fundamentally. It had forced her to confront fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. It had tested her courage and resilience. And though the mystery of the person or people who had used the bunker might never be fully solved, she had faced it, survived it, and learned from it. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the yard, she felt a sense of quiet acceptance. The backyard would always hold memories of what had been uncovered, and the bunker would remain a symbol of secrets and vigilance. Life would continue, different now, shaped by the hidden world she had uncovered and the strength she had discovered within herself. And though the quiet house and calm streets appeared ordinary once more, she knew better. Some secrets once revealed never fully fade. They remain with you, quietly shaping the world around you and reminding you that life often hides more than it reveals. She had found the truth beneath her backyard, and it had changed everything.